I'm Michael Chesterman, and today I'm very pleased to be joined by Alison Price. Now, I'm just reading I'm not going to read everything in relation to Alison. I'm going to ask her to give a bit of introduction herself too soon, but she is a former director and board member for the National Association of Women in Construction, NAWIC. And I think prior to that sort of federal sort of board level, you had 3 years as the Queensland chapter president of NAWIC. As well as that, she's the founder and managing director of SoilCyclers. Now, the way I look at that business, and we're going to get Alison to speak about it in great detail, is it's everything to do with the efficient use, reuse, sustainability, everything to do with soil. So I think it's a fascinating business you got there, Alison. But so before we start off on that, can you just fill in the gaps in terms of the Alison Price story a little bit?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Michael. So I'm the founder and managing director of SoilCyclers, and we specialise in changing the physical, chemical and biological features of waste soil on site or unsuitable soil on site. So we've got mobile recycling machinery, and we go to our clients' sites and we test the soil, work out what is missing to get it to a specification of something they might be purchasing as a raw material from a quarry or a landscaping yard, and we make what they need from their waste on their site. So we can fix PFAS soil contamination, the firefighting foam contamination. We can separate non-friable asbestos from soil. We can make really good quality landscaping soils, Australian standards, Main Road standard, R178 specification as well. And also make geotechnical soil amendments to fill material. For example, we can turn Class C fill into Class A1 or A2 fill.
So, in a nutshell, why is that good? You know, it resonates with me for a number of reasons. But what are the benefits in all that sort of concentration? Because when you think about it, every building and construction, whether it's infrastructure, house building, lands, you start with a block of soil. It starts there. So why is the efficient and sustainable use of soil so important?
So it takes thousands of years for topsoil to form naturally, just a couple of centimetres worth of topsoil. So we're actually now eroding our soil faster than what is being made naturally. It's one of those resources that people don't really think of as a resource, but the topsoil is what helps us make all of our roadsides and our parks and gardens green, but also stops erosion and stops sediment getting into our waterways. So it's very interlinked, not just with food production, but also with the environment. And we also find that with construction, we have a lot of trucks running around on roads full of all different kinds of soils and waste soils and raw materials. If you can prevent those trucks running around on local roads around your project by reducing the waste that you're disposing of off-site and turning that into something you would be purchasing, it's a win for the environment, but it's also a really big win for the bottom line. So it's one of those nice things where I get to save my clients money and do the right thing for the environment.
So, excuse me if I'm going to ask some dumb questions, but you know, so are you bought into projects from your perspective too early or too late? I would assume, based on what you would do, if you had an early line of sight for some project ideas, that would be a really good outcome for someone who is looking for an owner who is looking for a really efficient outcome. So I guess the question's too, is that right? But generally, are you bought in too late to the project?
Almost always too late. It's one of those tricky things where you can approach it once someone is on site and has a stockpile of soil that they're looking at, thinking, oh, we can't grow anything in this. It's not growing anything. We can't get rid of this. It's waste and it's going to cost us too much. Or you could go to the designers and work with the designers. So I'm not a soil scientist. We do have a number of soil scientists externally to us that we use who are specialists in different areas, and a lot of them work very closely with the designers to work on specifications. But so often I see specs for jobs and I just, I know it's not going to work. And, you can quote for the spec, or you can try and talk the client through getting a better outcome for them. And sometimes that better outcome is actually a saving for them as well, which is a really nice outcome.
Would it be true to say, I've heard it said that, increasingly the best soil has been, or the best land has been used in terms of our urban areas already. So we're sort of pushing out into some more fringe areas where possibly the land is not as good, inverted commas. Is that the case, or does it really matter? Is it just perceived that the best land has just been the land that's been developed so far, and there's still soil out there? All soil can be rectified, if that's the right word.
I would actually say that the quality soil. So if we if we get a poor quality soil, for example, we do all of the topsoil for the Aura project on the Sunshine Coast, and that's a former pine plantation, really poor quality soils. And yet you look at the landscaping in that project and everything looks amazing. So that's a great example of a project that has recycled their soil and ameliorated their soil from the very beginning of the project. You've turned their very poor quality soils into a premium quality topsoil that many landscapers describe as the best soil they've seen on the Sunshine Coast. So I would say that it doesn't matter so much what the soil is on the project. It's what you do to treat it well and recycle it and improve it to get it to a specification that you can use on your project.
So I'm just thinking back to some of the issues that I saw when I was with the QBSA or the BSA in terms of some of the disputes. So, and a lot of the disputes came back to reactive soil and the use of certain sort of slab technology and things like that. So it was a misalignment, so to speak. So I'm thinking up Toowoomba Way and things like that, where there was all sort of, I won't get into the technical stuff because I'd lose myself, but it was more reactive, and then the building technique might have been a little bit out of kilter, and all of a sudden you're getting split slabs and all that sort of stuff. Can you do something about reactive soil? Or is there a limit to what you can do?
Some things. I guess it depends on the budget. So we don't normally play in the building a house space. That would be too small a job for us. No. We would normally play in the building a highway, like Toowoomba Second Range Crossing, for example.
Yep.
Now, when you look at the properties of soil, what you're talking about is plasticity, and it's highly reactive and very like moldable, like Play-Doh, which is not a great texture to build a road on if you want that road to stay there. So yes, to a certain extent, you can adapt those things, but it very much depends on your budget. If you've got an unlimited budget, you can do anything at all. Sometimes it's a case of it's not necessarily commercial to turn, 10,000 cubic meters of highly plastic black soil into an A1 fill material. But if it was a case of there was a really good reason to do that, then yes, the technology is there that you absolutely could do that. What I'm thinking of is not just the one-off sort of stuff. There's one sort of development that I can think of where it was a big sort of mass. It was a big project builder. So I'm obviously not going to get the names, but so it was a large area being developed for hundreds of houses, so to speak. So as the technology got better, as the years have gone on in terms of this sort of ability to be able to turn dud soil into usable, better soil? Absolutely. I think soil science is a really exciting area in that it's constantly developing. We've been through the last 15, 20 years, we've been through the age of soil chemistry, where we try and get the chemistry of the soil right to make things grow. Now we're moving into an age of soil biology where we try and get the microbial activity right, as well as balancing everything else to make things grow. So that's a really rapidly evolving technology. On the geotechnical side of things with the soil amendments there, that's a pretty new field too. It's it's something we've done a lot of R&D in that space, and there's only a certain number of soil scientists that we work with that have the capability to make those recommendations. You know, you get a test result and say, you know, mix this fairy dust and this bat poo, and therefore, voila, you will have this specification. And, you know, when you're doing large volumes of that, you need to get those mixing recommendations right. Otherwise, you're going to have a job where you didn't achieve the specification and you're not going to get paid.
Yeah, so the development I'm thinking of is that, you know, it must have burnt the developer or / builder big time, because there was a lot of houses which showed this, you know, cracking, this slab cracking. So to me, it would be so the opportunity maybe these days is to, well, you know, invest at the front end, less problems at the back end. So, you know, rather than just run the gauntlet of hoping that, you know, yes, it's reactive soil, and then we think this slab's going to be okay, but the slab's, you know, increasingly, on a number of occasions, literally split in half. You know, that's a risk that I don't understand, from what you just said now, why anyone would take it these days if things had developed along the scientific lines that you just outlined now.
The problem is who's going to pay for it. The point at which it's most easily done is the point at which the subdivision is being made and the roads are being done and everything divided up. But, you know, that's a pretty intangible thing for the developer to go, oh, we've fixed all the soil, so therefore you can build your house on it. So therefore we're going to charge you an extra $80,000 for your block of land.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those things that there's no one to pay for it at the time where it would be really relevant and useful, which is why a lot of what we're working on comes into play with the big infrastructure type projects, more so than individual residential blocks, unfortunately.
Okay, so that makes sense, and clearly from an economics perspective, they're the people that have got the grunt and the capacity to wear the front up costs to mitigate any sort of losses that potentially could occur down the back end. So you get your benefit as you roll through the building of the highway and whatnot. Generally speaking, from a general contractor's perspective, is a general contractors or sorry, take a step back. Are people still thinking about soil and waste the old way? You know, if you need to get some more soil, you go over here and you just dump it down, or if you need to get rid of stuff, it's the same sort of stuff. We just dig it up and send it to somebody else. Is it? You'll send it to dish it out to be waste somewhere else. Is it still that sort of thinking?
We're not great with change in the construction industry, and particularly in the Queensland construction industry. Digging things up and dumping them in holes has always been relatively cheap. Some of those attitudes are starting to change. In some cases, it's driven by the governments that are funding those projects. For example, there is an environmental rating scheme now for federally funded projects in excess of $50 million. It's actually a contractual requirement for those contractors who are building those projects to achieve a suitable environmental rating on those projects. And that's a huge driver for driving change. Other people who can drive change are the asset owners who look at, for example, a subdivision, a developer of a subdivision. You can make quality topsoils that don't require as much watering to establish landscapes. You can make quality topsoils that you can buy cheaper trees that are half the size and half the price and make them grow twice as fast. Those asset owners, if they start to think about the economics of their project from a sustainability perspective and also from a financial perspective, there's a reason for them to make that change. But unless it's specified, the people who are building the job, they just want to move as much dirt as they can as quickly as possible. And if there's an opportunity for a variation along the way and to move the dirt twice, that's even better. Yeah.
So how the role of Australian standards when it comes to the classification, is that the right terminology, the Australian standards in terms of the process? Have you got any comments about that, or do people overly? I tend to think people overly rely on standards generally, but you know, the general thing about standards is they should always be recognised as minimum, not best practice, and certainly not a practice that should be just adopt it every single time on the basis of, oh, there you go, I'll mitigate all my risk, I'm meeting the industry standard. You got any views about that?
Yeah, I do actually. Australian standard for topsoil is they've improved it over the years. The most recent version is 2018. It's a lot better than the previous version was, but there's still a lot of loopholes in it. There was a news article recently about a subdivision in Sydney that had a contractor, a screening and grinding and crushing contractor who was taking in waste, grinding it up, mixing it with the soil on that site and sending it out to be landscaping material. And you know what? I can get stuff like that to comply with AS 4419. Would I? Should I? In my opinion, no. I think if people knew the quality of what was in these Australian standards products, they might think that they would really feel a bit more comfortable if they paid a bit extra and got something better quality.
Yeah, okay. We've got a question that we might... What inspired you to find SoilCyclers? How did your interest in the industry spark? There you go.
I met a boy in my case. So, I don't know too many young girls who grow up and go to school and dream of wearing fluoro orange and steel caps to work one day. So in my case, like many of the women in the industry, I arrived here accidentally. It took me a while to wrap my head around things, and I'm still learning as we go. I'll still occasionally ask a really stupid question, but I absolutely love what I do. It's a great industry to be in. It's a place where you can make a lot of really positive change and really make a difference. And you can always drive around and annoy your kids and your relatives by saying, "Oh, we helped build that. We helped build that too. We helped build that as well."
Plus, you've got the fancy big, gadgety equipment to be able to play on and all that sort of stuff. So
large toys, yeah.
Large toys, yeah. So how long ago was that? When did that sort of meet the boy? I love that.
Met the boy 13 years ago and founded SoilCyclers 11 and a half years ago. So, we were very new, dating as opposed to anything that you would call a partner. And my original plan was I would, start the business. I would do a website, some safety paperwork and a contract, and that was all I thought I'd ever do. And I put a YouTube video on our very first website, which was pretty unusual back in 2009 to have a YouTube video on your website. And people would watch this video and they'd call, and they already knew what we did and that they wanted what we did because they knew it was going to save them a lot of money. So the business grew, and my consulting job that I worked in at the time went from being full-time to part-time to not very much time at all to just contracts occasionally to then nothing. So it's been a great journey.
So it's sort of almost like an open-ended sort of journey. You went into it with your eyes sort of open a little bit, I suppose, but not really where you know where you're heading off. Really, it's just been a...
Yeah, I remember the very first excavator we bought was it had done about 13,000 hours, and it cost more than my car. Actually cost more than 2 cars put together, and I was just completely horrified at how expensive it was. And I look back on that now, and there's no way we'd ever buy an excavator like that. We buy new excavators because we need them to be reliable, and we need to be able to turn up to mine sites and highway projects and have them work. But yeah, I've learnt a lot in the process, and we as a business have grown a lot as well.
Yeah, okay. So we've got some more questions. Okay. Without naming names, how's it going on the payment side? Okay, so in this recession, I think I was saying to you off air that from our perspective, things are starting to get a little bit interesting with people pushing buttons now to get paid, whereas a couple of months ago they might be a little bit more prepared to sort of work out a deal. I suppose from your perspective, you're right front end, aren't you? So that's got to be an advantage in terms of getting paid. Am I right or wrong?
Oh, yes and no. Our customers are companies. And companies, as we've seen with so many that have gone broke over the years, are risky. And we've certainly had our fair share of very hard to take losses over the years. I've got a couple at the moment who are a little bit slow to pay. I've got, a couple that have actually made payment arrangements and are communicating really well. I generally, as a business owner, I've been there and I've done that. So anyone who will communicate with me, we can usually manage to work something out. In terms of, the larger projects that we do, we've had a few along the way where we've done Subcontractor Charges Act claims and the old BSIPA, and I think we've done one BIF one since that's come in. And we're generally pretty quick to follow up our invoices because we know we can't afford to not get paid.
Yeah, no, it's a great principle to work on. As long as you know how you're exposed when the payments are due, and then if there's communications from the other side, the debtor, well then that's fine. You can make a sensible sort of compromise and get into payment arrangements. But when there's money's due and there's just silence, it's
a surefire way to get a nasty letter from my lawyers.
No, it's just you've just got to run a tight ship like that these days. The guest before you was Wayne Clark, who's the CEO of the Building Industry Credit Bureau, which is all the big suppliers, and they've got everything up there on their side basically in terms of personal guarantees and access to amazing trial balances that they share with each other and like that. So they make critical live decisions about supporting or not supporting people in terms of supplying goods. And it's just so critical that you get in a situation where if you're owed money, it's a bigger problem for them than it is for you. So which I've always sort of put that on to some people. Some of the bad payers in the industry will try to make the problem bigger for you rather than them. And then they'll say, well, the only way you're going to keep on getting anything is if you keep on supporting me, which of course just is the worst thing you can do. But as long as you can know how much you're owed and pull out or do something to exercise your rights before it becomes a massive issue, that's always my advice when it comes to these things. But you've got to know, your books have got to be accurate, and you just got to know exactly how much you are exposed to at any time, at any point in time.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing I always say is if you can get your contract right up front so that you're not going to have disputes. Disputes are part of the issue of getting paid a lot of the time. So if you can remove all of the disputes and have really good communication and collaboration with clients and some decent but simple contractual terms so that they understand what they're signing up for and you don't have arguments, it goes a long way towards not having payment issues.
It's all that sort of stuff that, if you work hard at the front end, you'll mitigate your disputes at the back end. So, more questions. Oh, okay. What's the biggest challenge you have faced starting out in the industry, and how did you overcome it?
Just one. I think one of the great things about this industry is there's a different challenge every day, and for those of us that like solving problems, that's actually a really fun place to be most of the time. Sometimes those challenges don't feel all that enjoyable at the time. I guess, as a business owner, growth has been a really big challenge for us. We've grown, up until last year, we've grown about 116% on average year on year. And I put the brakes on deliberately last year and wanted some time to consolidate because it was just getting too much. So keeping up with growth when you're a very innovative business in your own brand new market segment has been a challenge over the years. Also, changing the way people do business has been a challenge. But it's a challenge I've really enjoyed because it's something I'm passionate about. And I love seeing businesses choosing to do things a better way and enjoying the commercial benefits and the PR benefits that come with that as well.
So that's interesting you said about what you did last year. You basically had a bit of a time out, or you consolidated. In the benefit of hindsight, what a wonderful decision that is, given what 2020 turned out to be. What did you do? You know, what did you do? Did you just try to say, look, you know, I'm worried about this growth. We just need to. I don't know. What did you do? What did you try to consolidate last year?
Yeah, it helped that it coincided with a bit of an infrastructure industry downturn for us.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time on procedures and systems. We have all fully automated paperless site systems. So I can get a video feed of what my excavator operators can see on all of the different sites. You know, they're often, 3,000 kilometers apart, but I can still see what's going on. And there's Bluetooth sensors on machines that send information back to the office, and reports that go to the office with automations, so we can do more with less. I guess this year has given me a bit more time again, unexpectedly so. It's like drawing a big red line through your 2020 business plan and going, try again next year, if you survive.
I'll just be happy to call Christmas tomorrow and just say, let's go to 2021 straight away.
If I had a bit more time, I might put the tree up to try and hurry it along, but I haven't got there yet. So I guess this year, with a bit more downtime, for me, I used to travel a lot. I was on a plane somewhere at least once or twice a fortnight at a minimum. And I spent a lot of time in airport lounges and hotels and juggling things in between meetings. But this year has been a chance to stop. I haven't been on a plane in 6 months. And like a lot of people who used to travel a lot, I'm saying I love it. I've enjoyed a bit more time at my desk, a bit more strategy time. And we've always been an innovative business, but this year has given me the chance to work on some new innovations, so that we're not coasting on our laurels and comfortable with where we were. This year we got uncomfortable and it made us innovate again. And I hope I've set us up for the next 5 years or so.
Okay, so we'll come back to that innovation in a minute. So last year really was you went back and had a look at all your systems. Is that a good way of, your systems and your processes and your communication strategy and everything like that, just to sort of make sure that all the information, all the data, because data's gold, so to speak. And this year because out of necessity, you've taken the opportunity to look at innovation. What's some of the innovation sort of things that have tweaked your interest? What are you focused on in terms of innovation as far as your business is concerned?
Sure. So I've been looking at ways to use what we have, the type of machinery that we have, and the science that we use in different applications. For example, earlier this year, we were issued with Queensland's first ever mobile and temporary composting license, so an ERA permit to do composting, but mobile on any site in Queensland. So that doesn't mean we would go down the road to Farmer Joe's place and set up a new composting facility. What it means is we can work with developers and big subdivisions and big infrastructure highway projects and take the green waste that's been stripped from their site as part of the construction and turn it into a soil conditioner that they can use as part of their construction on their site. So we're making the compost that we would incorporate into the topsoil for their landscaping. That's a really big win for the environment. There's so many less trucks running around on local roads, but also those sites, the green waste that they've got on their site, they're not introducing any new contaminants. We've had a lot of issues with PFAS contamination in compost the last few years, and this for us is a way to avoid that problem, avoid that risk for our clients. Other innovation we've worked on has been in the mining space. So working with tailings and coal mine overburden, turning those materials into topsoil for mines that maybe don't have enough topsoil or some of them don't have any topsoil and they need to do rehabilitation. So I've actually really enjoyed taking some of the lessons from the infrastructure space into the mining space. we often say mining is a long way ahead of us in terms of safety. Infrastructure is a long way ahead of mining in terms of environmental and revegetation. And the reason for that, I think, is because we're always in a hurry to finish our projects. If you drive through a new highway project, there's not too many people other than the people that built it that maybe look at the bitumen. Most people are looking at the landscaping around that project. And if the landscaping's not right, you don't get your practical completion and you don't get to leave. So having that kind of technology from infrastructure, taking that to the mining industry is making a big change for them in a good way, I hope.
Okay, so that's fascinating, particularly the bit about turning the green waste, so to speak, or into containing it, repurposing it basically for improvement of the soil of that on right there. You mitigate all, like you said, the possibility of any unknown contaminants being imported. So and plus all the, like you said, the benefits of trucks not going and trucks coming and all that sort of stuff. That's just a win-win. That's fantastic. I love that.
Thanks.
What else we got? Okay. We got one about advice for women. We might hold that one back actually to. We've got a lot waiting for women. That's okay. Okay, so what we might do is we might move on to the second aspect of, we've sort of covered it already. So from an industry perspective, you mentioned to me the other day when we were preparing for this that you're really keen to make sure that there's conversations around sustainability and just looking after our planet, so to speak. But it's the right thing from an environmental perspective, but it's the right thing from an economic perspective and a commercial perspective. So what do you want to say about that? That whole the whole sustainability issue.
I think as an industry, we're one of the biggest waste producing industries in the country. And as an industry, we've got an opportunity to make a really big difference on a large scale. We can all go home and use our recycling bins and take our shopping bags to the shops and not use single-use plastics and those kinds of things. But as an industry, we can make a really substantial difference to our country's waste and what ends up in landfills. So I think it's really important to look at ways to construct jobs better. We're at a point where there's plenty of substitutes for putting soil into the landfills, and it's almost environmental vandalism to be putting soil into a landfill and wasting it that way. Obviously, on some smaller sites or tunnels and that kind of thing, it's almost impossible, but it is possible to repurpose those soils and reuse and recycle them, as opposed to filling up our local landfill capacity, because we're going to need that in years to come as our cities and towns grow. Yes, the other side of things would be, I think a lot of my clients are not really aware of some of the risks of what they're doing on site. And, they're following the specifications on the job. They do what the specs tell them to do. But sometimes I look at those specs and I go, oh, you're building a school here. Let's just improve the spec a little bit from there. And the issue is, in this environment where we take the lowest price because everyone's just so busy competing to try and win work and keep their staff working and keep their machinery operating, is we don't actually consider that the lowest price is actually not getting a good outcome for our project. So I know it's been a problem that our industry has had for a very long time, but I like to hope that with a little bit more awareness of some of the potential risks, that we will start to lift our game. And I have seen that over the years, but probably not quite as fast as what I'd like.
It's specifications or scope of works or anything like that. The devil's in the detail, and that's where you see so many disputes. It doesn't, not just in your particular line of business, but anything in the construction business. Generally, contracts are reasonably bound by reasonable conditions, but it's always the specifications, the scope of work, think I said to you the other day, it's also the scope of not what's necessarily scoped in, but what is scoped out as well, a clear understanding. But specifications just, and this comes back to Australian standards too, I suppose. People probably over-rely upon Australian standards as, oh, well, it meets the standards, so tick, move on to the next problem. It's, like you said, if you're looking at a school or something like that, man, oh man, you just want to make sure that there's no nasty contaminants that are going to cause any sorts of problems in that area.
Definitely. And I guess we're probably a little bit unusual in our communication style, where we're not overly contractual. We will see a specification. If we see that it's not going to get a good outcome for our client, I would rather put my hand up and say something at a point where we can still change it, rather than wait for it to go wrong and put my hand up for a variation to fix it later. So I know that's really unusual behaviour in our industry, and maybe I'd be retired by now if I had a slightly different ethos. But I like to sleep at night, and I think it keeps our clients coming back time after time when you do the right thing by them, and when they've got that confidence that you will put your hand up and say, actually, we're not the best people to do this job for you. How about you go speak to these guys over here? We'll catch up with you on the next one.
Yeah, no, it's a great philosophy. I think it was sort of a little bit like we were talking about off before we formally got onto this chat, is that it's the part of the business I don't like is hard knuckle disputes. No one's a winner. You can say the lawyers, everyone else that might benefit from it in terms of fees, but it's a terrible process to be involved in all the time, disputes. So if you can work with somebody and form a collaborative type and respectful arrangement, you'll be benefited down the track in terms of cementing that commercial relationship on an ongoing basis, because they'll remember, oh yeah, Alison had this to say, so we changed things around, and that probably did save us a whole lot of money in terms of variations that could have come through.
Yeah, I think often people say, oh, you're just too expensive. You're more expensive than this other contractor who's going to do the job for us. And I'll say, well, feel free to go with them. But know that you take our more expensive option. It covers everything. We're not going to be on the lookout for a variation to get ourselves some extra margin. We've costed the job appropriately, and we're going to be looking for savings and potential wins that we'll share with you.
Okay, what we might do now is, before we move into these questions, is to give you because there's a few questions about women in the construction industry, everything like that, which I know we'll get into. But let's just cover you. So your NAWIC roles are now all former past roles. You made that point to me the other day just to make sure. But so you can't speak on behalf of the present NAWIC's leadership or anything like that. But in terms of your years, what was the thing there was a couple of things you were really proud of in terms of not just your national board membership, but your Queensland chapter years of NAWIC? Is there one or two things that you're particularly proud of in terms of driving some change in the industry as far as women are concerned?
Yeah, I think I'm most proud of the culture we developed in Queensland, where that there's a big push as women in a minority to try and push for better conditions and better opportunities. But I think what we developed in Queensland was a culture where we were working together with the men in the industry to achieve a really positive change. And a positive change not just for women in the industry, but for everyone who works in the industry. When I was Queensland chapter president, and I started having a lot of guys wanting to join the council and the subcommittees. And initially I was a little bit worried, like, are you planning on using this as a dating pool, or what's the plan there? Was that they were wanting to achieve and why they were wanting to be involved in NAWIC. They started saying things like, we like the flexible work conditions that they're introducing to attract more women to the industry. We like the culture. when there's women in our workplace. We like the communication style when there's women in our workplace. So I'm very proud of the team within Queensland, and yes, I was one of them, but the entire team, you know, there are 50 plus volunteers that worked on this with me. I cannot take credit for it, but what we achieved in terms of positive working relationships with the industry and that drive to change the culture of the industry for the better of everyone involved.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we might pick up on a couple of the specific questions. Okay, well, what changes need to happen in the industry to make it a more equal and equitable for women? So you're proud on what's been happening so far, but what more needs to happen?
Yeah, for the first time in 20 plus years, we're actually starting to see a little bit of a shift in the numbers, which is exciting. And, you know, I guess we need to focus on keeping up that change, because women make up 3% of frontline roles in the construction industry. That's pretty low. I had something pop up in my Facebook memories the other day about a site toilet that I was working on a site 8 years ago, and they brought me my own personal portaloo because I was the only girl on the site. I hadn't had one there, and it had become infested with wasps, and so I was juggling, trying to, you know, whether I spoke to them about my wasp-infested toilet or whether I just used the guy's toilet. We don't really have that problem anymore as women. So we have made massive changes to the way the industry runs just in a short space of time, but we can't afford to get comfortable with it. We're not there. We need to attract more women, attract more talent to our industry, not just women, but men as well. And a good culture will help attract more talented people to our industry.
Yeah.
We need to keep them once we get them here. And a poor culture won't keep them. So we've got a lot of work to do, and but we're on our way.
One of the things, I haven't got the details all fresh in my mind, but I read a CSQ report a couple of years ago, or a couple of years ago, and it profiled, the percentage of women in the industry. It was very low, as you said, 3% or 2%. But it also profiled, the medium age of the men, so to speak, and very, very old age industry. So two things spread, or there's another thing that spread. So that when I read that, I thought, okay, there's an opportunity there for young people, in inverted commas, more women also, to come through, because they're going to have to come through, because they're going to have to replace the older generation, which are going in, quite rightly, thinking of retiring. But the other thing that's sort of come to mind in recent times, and you touched on in terms of innovation in your industry, the more the construction industry innovates, I think there's just going to be more opportunities for women to play just so many more central roles, because a lot of stuff will be manufactured off-site. So, the capacity or the ability for even new tasks, they'll have to be a different workforce. It won't necessarily have to be, the physical, labour intensive on the job, on the site sort of stuff. It could be, completely different training needs, but with technology, the opportunity for the women as a result of the innovation that comes through is, I just think, just enormous.
Huge. The one thing I do say to women though is whatever kind of job they're looking for, if it's a physical job, don't let anyone tell you that you're not capable of doing that. So in my business, we run a trainee plant operator program, and we take people with zero experience, and over a 2-year period, we teach them to drive machinery, and they get all of their tickets. And hopefully at the end of that 2 years, we've turned them into a leading hand that runs one of our screening plants for us. Now, whether it's the women or the men that participate in that program, they all have work to do from a physical perspective to get themselves up to speed. And so I just wanted to say, for any woman thinking about doing a job in construction, yes, you can do desk-based jobs. There are plenty of those. you can do site-based jobs, but if you want to, you can also do some of those physical jobs as well. It just takes time to get yourself there to get those skills.
Yeah, great words. Great words. Okay, so we're just going to just seeing what I haven't. No, I think we've sort of covered the questions. Well, I think you just gave it. What's your best advice for girls, women who are first starting out in the industry? So what, be fearless?
No, I'd say don't be afraid to be different. As a woman entering the industry, it can be really daunting, and you are often really different. You are often only female in the room. Get used to it and turn it into a strength, because you've often got a different perspective. You think about problems in a different way. So work on your technical skills. Make sure that you have earned the right to be in the room and have that seat at the table. But then keep being different and keep doing things in a different way, and don't lose touch with who you are just to be part of the industry.
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful little sort of note to finish on, I think. Is there anything you want to add to this little chat?
Oh, no, I could talk all day, Michael, but yeah, I've really enjoyed chatting to you. Helix does some fabulous things, and yeah, I love watching your social media presence. You're doing a great job.
Well, you're going to see lots of you coming up here, because Emily will cut this. We'll get this sort of cut up into about 15 or 20 different little snippets of the issues, and we'll just roll them out one at a time. So you'll see yourself, and we'll make sure you're tagged, and we'll give you plenty of opportunity to use it again. So, Alison, it's been wonderful talking to you. Sorry about the stuff up in terms of going on Facebook Live, but like I said, we'll circle back around and publish it on Facebook tomorrow, and like I said, generate lots of publicity through Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn through like I said, the little cut-ups that we do. So thank you very much for making the time. It's been wonderful talking to you. I think you're a really interesting, inspirational person. So keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks so much for having me.
Take care.
See you.